Welcome back to the channel. This week I am starting to plant the garden. The first thing I'm doing is hardening off my plants, which is a process to get them used to being outside. So one day I'll bring them out into the shade for a couple hours, bring them back in. The next day, put them in the shade for a couple hours, bring them back in. Next day, put them in a little bit of sunshine and bring them back in, just to get them used to being out in the full sunshine. If you've seen my previous video, you know I've been doing some temperature testing in my greenhouse, and on the ground it stays really warm and consistent with the temperature. So I decided I want to try to plant in the ground here. I first had to move my shelving around and take up the weed barrier that I had put down. Last year in the greenhouse here, there was so many weeds coming up through the sides and everything that I had put the weed barrier down. And then the ground was really dry in here and compacted from having everything just sat on top of it. So I put in some water and was digging up the soil a bit just to loosen up the soil so I can put my seeds in the ground here. On this side I planted a Chinese green called choysum and a Chinese cabbage. On this side I planted some onions, lettuce, and bok choy. So out here in my outdoor raised bed gardens, I put the weed barrier or the plastic down just a few weeks ago. I didn't get these garden beds covered with mulch in the fall like I had wanted to, so they had a lot of snow and everything else piled on top of it. And to get my seeds planted, I needed to get the soil warm. So this bed already has garlic coming up and it's doing great. We've had a couple of really warm days here, so they're growing good. And then I covered everything else up to warm it up and get the ground ready so that we can plant some seeds. I prefer to have a fall mulch. It really helps get the soil ready. Last year the kids helped throw all the straw on these beds, and you can see here that when you do get a fall mulch in, the ground stays nice and moist, and the worms have been in here just doing their thing, getting the soil nice for the spring plant here, and it really makes for a nice garden bed in the springtime when you get a fall mulch done. So here I just sped this up because it'd be probably boring to watch cleaning out the bed, moving all of our stuff, getting the plastic off. The ground looked really good. There wasn't anything frozen. There was weeds starting to come up because we've had some nice weather, and we had bunnies in here if you saw my last video. So I was putting on some mushroom compost on the top of the bed just to get the soil biology started and going. And then we raked it in. We're raking in all the stuff from the bunnies too, and the compost and everything else like that. This bed had random carrots coming up in it last year too, so we found some of those, and we're just getting the ground cleaned up so that we could get some stuff planted. So to plant my seeds, I just split my bed kind of in half, or do all the way across. Just make some rows. Here I'm planting Hawkerite turnips. Last year was the first time we had ever tried some of those, and they're pretty good. They just kind of take the flavor of whatever you cook them with. So we're planting those. They grow really well. The other side we're planting some different beets, some for leaves and some for eating. Then we planted peas and some Chinese cabbage. I should have thought about it sooner. Peas don't like to be heavily composted, so I didn't need to put the compost on this area, but I think they'll still grow fine, even with a little bit of compost on it. It shouldn't bother them too much. If there's too much nitrogen, they don't like to grow, though, because they take nitrogen from the air and put it back into the soil. So on the other side, he's planting some Chinese cabbage there. And this bed's also going to have potatoes and my cabbage plants once I plant the cabbage plants outside. This side, I did more of the same, so it didn't show too much here, but we just put the compost on top again, raked it all in. We're going to have just leave the garlic growing, and I'll be putting things like tomatoes and my broccoli and other plants like that out here too. Next day I came out and planted my potatoes. When we went to get seed potatoes at the store, they were already all out. The stores had some. We didn't buy them then. So I'm using potatoes that I grew last year, and they've gone crazy sprouting in the wood box that I have them in. So I just grabbed my sprouting potatoes that I have and dug a trench and put them in. I'll probably go to the store and get some seed potatoes to act as a backup, maybe throw some of those in here too, just so we get some potatoes again. Here we are at the greenhouse again. It's been a week since I planted the seeds in the ground here, and not too much has come up, just a little bit of the Chinese cabbage. I'm not too worried about it actually, because the choy sum and the cabbage usually take 10 to 14 days to sprout. So it's only been a week and they've got plenty of time to start coming up, but not too much so far, just a little bit. Here on the other side, I've got a lot more coming up of the Tokyo Bacana, which again is, it's a green, but you pick it like leaf lettuce. So we'll be able to just pick some leaves off of it. And it's coming up really good. There's not too much of anything else going though. But again, I'm not too worried. It's only been 7 days. Outside, there's not too much growing yet. In this section here where we planted beets and Chinese cabbage, there is a little bit of coming up, which is almost surprising to see. We did have some snow at the end of the week last week. So here in the second bed is some carrots coming up, which is nice to see also. And probably next week I'll put out my cabbage and broccoli plants. So this is what I use to keep my covers off the plants as they're growing. It's fencing that we bent to fit the bed, and it works good to keep the plants warm as they just start getting to grow. This side over here is one long piece, which is kind of heavy to move around, but it's kind of nice to just pick up the ends, and it's mostly up. The other side is two pieces, which is easier to move around, but more pieces to have, so it works good though. Now this is my PVC hoop that I have set up. We didn't really have plans for it. We just kind of put it together how we thought it would work. So we have 4 hoops, and it's, I believe, 1/2-inch PVC hoops that we used. And then we got 3/4 inch pieces and put in the ground, so we can just slide the hoops into those, and it holds everything up and keeps it in place. We used T-connectors and slid it on to the pole and then screwed it into place so it doesn't slide down. We couldn't find the 4-sided connectors when we were building it, so we just used T-connectors, and they seem to work fine. We just screwed them in so that they don't slide around on the hoop. The one thing about the hoops is They aren't super tall, which is nice in the fall, but when I have tall like tomato plants and things, the plants grow taller than the hoop. So I think I'm going to try to make like extensions, since I do have the ability to move the legs here. Use some connections to make it a little bit taller, and all of these are the same way, so I can just lift up all the legs and lift up the entire hoop system here. And I think that'll work, except I'm worried about the wind that we get. It might shake everything, I'm not sure. So I'm probably going to tie it down somehow on the end here, tie it down to the ground just because of the wind. Otherwise, it works really nice to keep weather off the plants for the winter and the summer months. Lynn Gillespie at the Living Farm has what she calls her Easy Trellis, and I'll link that below. It's a really interesting system with PVC. Thanks for watching.